Welcome to the Public Safety Innovators Podcast. Connecting you with trendsetters who are leading innovation in public safety and expert advice on growing your own post-law enforcement business. And now, your host, Adam Wills.
Welcome to episode 35 of the Public Safety Innovators Podcast. In this episode, we are going to take a closer look at a new ID scanning solution that actually works for verifying identification and detecting fakes. Mark Baxter is a current cop, budding copreneur, member of the exclusive Leota CEO community, and friend. In this episode, he is going to share some of his lessons learned so far on his copreneurial journey. If you are a budding copreneur yourself, my hope is that this episode inspires you to pursue your idea too. All right, let's get after it. Mark, welcome to the Public Safety Innovators Podcast. It's good to have you on.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
Yeah, well, it's my pleasure as well. I've been trying to get you to come on the show for a little bit now, and you've kind of been hemming and hawing, and I finally got you here. See, I got my way.
Yeah, I give in eventually. You know, it's a great cause.
Well, today on the show, we're going to talk a bit with Mark about detecting fraudulent identifications and technology in order to do that, which is what Mark does with his company SureScan. So what can you tell us about SureScan? What does it do, and why is this an important problem to solve?
Well, SureScan is a company that came about because of my experience with battling fake IDs over the last, I'd say since about 2010, when they got prevalent coming overseas from China mostly. What had happened was we started seeing an influx in these high quality fake IDs that, you know, all the retailers and even, you know, officers were scanning, and they were coming back as good. And, you know, they were being scanned with the police computers for issuing tickets, and they were coming back as a, you know, it's not checking the authenticity of the ID. It's just taking the data and filling in a form on a citation, and then they would get summonses for people who didn't even exist, or it wasn't even the right person. So that's when I knew it was becoming a problem. So that's when I started researching, you know, different solutions other than the typical manual checks, which can be cumbersome if you don't know what you're looking for. So that's how this came about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of how the world of counterfeits work, right? I mean, there's always it's always a game of cat and mouse, trying to stay one step ahead of each other. And I've seen some pretty convincing counterfeits out there myself. And obviously for law enforcement, like you said, the big problem is that when we issue a summons, especially with a lot of these systems out there now and connected to the MDTs in our patrol cars, you know, we scan those and it goes right into our system and creates the summons or citation. And like you said, if it's not an authentic identification, then you're issuing a summons or a citation to somebody who doesn't exist. And I guess I personally see this becoming an even bigger problem here with all of the police reform stuff that's going on. Certainly here in Colorado, they are actually moving towards making everything a felony for and under a summonsable offense. And so now if you're summonsing people for felonies, we want to make sure even more that we have the right identification, that this is an actual person that we are issuing this summons to, so that we can bring them into court. And of course, I won't dive into right now my personal opinion and get on my soapbox about how stupid that is. Oh, wait, I just gave my personal opinion. About summonsing people for felonies. But anyway, that's where we are. And obviously this becomes a bigger problem, right? In making sure that we have good identity on people.
Right. And I mean, there are a litany of reasons why they're such a problem. Um, the primary one is that they're so easy to obtain these days, because all you need is a smartphone and $50 to score one of these fake IDs, and anybody can do it. Not just, kids trying to get alcohol, but, everyone. And, it's not some out of date, New Jersey fake ID with scissor cut corners. I mean, these are often better looking than the genuines if you were to compare the two. And that's why, I try and tell them with these ID books, that a lot of these retailers, for instance, like alcohol retailers have, they're comparing these IDs to the book, and they're often better than the ones in the book. So it's like, how are they supposed to tell? And I mean, you can't expect them to know every state. And what every state, I don't even know that. And this is what I do for a living. There's still times when I have to go look states up because I never see them. You don't often see a Hawaii license on the East Coast. So, and of course, the fundamental concern is, state issued driver's licenses are the most common and the most prevalent form of ID. I mean, if you think about it, what's the first thing you ask for when you want to ID someone? Yeah. You ask for their license, their ID. So if you can't even get past that stage, then what good is the rest of everything you do? Because you never even
and you
know.
Make an excellent point there too. You make an excellent point there too that I didn't think about, and that's that if I'm somebody with nefarious intentions buying a fake ID, if I'm in Colorado, for example, chances are I'm not going to buy a Colorado fake ID because law enforcement in my area are going to be more in tune to detecting a fake ID that is inauthentic versus buying a fake ID from a neighboring state that is easier to pass on, So that's a really good point I didn't think about in this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And that's the biggest thing is, most people know what their state looks like because they have one of them, and they can just pull that out real quick if they're hesitant and compare it. But, if I'm in New Jersey and someone presents me a New Mexico license, okay, I've never seen one of these. What am I supposed to do? I can run it through dispatch, but say you have 10 people there, say you go in and do a bar check or something and you have, 30 people that look underage. Are you going to run every single one of those through dispatch? You'll be there forever and they'll hate you for it.
Yeah.
So that's the concern. And the fact of the prevalency of them, I mean, just between September of 2019 and March of 2020, there were more than 27,000 fake IDs seized through 3 airports by Customs and Border Patrol. And that's just 3 of their locations. I mean, 27,000, fake IDs and fake ID materials. So it's just, and what I've heard is it's only gotten worse since the pandemic, because everyone's drinking, not just the adults, the kids want to drink too. And everyone's hurting for money.
Yeah. And I presume that people are trying to move around a little bit more anonymously as well. So interesting stuff. I guess my next question for you, Mark, would be, what is different about the SureScan technology? Because we all understand how an ID scanner works, right? I mean, you're not talking to an audience here that needs an explanation of how that works or anything. But what is different about SureScan and the confidence that it can give as far as actually identifying the authenticity of a document?
Okay, so as you said, most people know how an ID scanner, your typical ID scanner works. It basically just translates the data that's encoded into the mag stripe or the barcode, and then it spits it out. And, depending on the end user, if it's checking for age verification, it's going to do the calculations and tell you if they're 21 or not. So basically all it is an expensive calculator because that's all it's doing. Unfortunately, they're being marketed as fake ID detectors or if they're not being marketed as that, there's the assumption that they are detecting fake IDs. And the only time it really can accurately detect that an ID is not genuine is if the counterfeiter is lazy and doesn't put something in there like a height or something that's should be there, and then it'll come back with an error. So that's the only time it really will detect those type of scanners. As far as SureScan goes, and what I'm offering is, so it goes back to, I was always a staunch opponent of ID scanners, primarily because of the reasons I just told you. And it gave people a false sense of security if they were scanning these licenses and they're not saying it's bad, or if they say, okay, they're 23 years old. So it was given a false sense of security. So I came upon, when I was doing my research, because of the influx of these IDs, I came upon one that touted a 98, 99% accuracy rate. So of course, being skeptical, I was like, nah, they're just saying that because everyone says it. And then I started hearing more about this technology and the software. So I contacted the manufacturer and the developer of the software, who happens to be IntelliCheck, which is a prominent company in the United States. I don't know if you've heard of them. So I spoke with them, and I spoke with the people that were in charge of the development of this application and software, and they allowed me to test it out. I told them what I did for a living. I told them my experience, basically that I was a fake ID expert in the courts and all that. So they ended up giving me let me try it out, and I tested it on numerous fake IDs, because I deal with hundreds every year, in a normal year, that is, not this past year. So what happened there was, I spent about 18 months testing this out, because I wanted to break it. I wanted it not to work, because that was what my whole thing was. These things don't work. You have to do manual checks. You have to know where the microprint is. Here's your magnifier. You have to carry this around everywhere, your UV light. But what I found out, it blew me away. I found it to have a 98% accuracy rate with all these IDs I threw into it. Even the newest ones from overseas, they were being detected, and I was just amazed. So the way this comes about is that this technology is actually authenticating the barcode. It's not. It is reading the barcode, but the first step is it authenticates the barcode, in that it's a genuine barcode that's issued by the state DMV it's purported to be issued by, because they all have different algorithms as far as check digits and whatnot. So that's what this does, is it authenticates the barcode. So that's how it's different. It's not just reading and spitting out data. The absolute first test it does is if it's an authentic barcode, and then it does all the other stuff to make it easier for everyone. It gives you their what their age is, the date of birth, what the name is, so that way you can check to make sure that name matches what's on the ID. And the picture, obviously, you want to match. It's not going to do that, but there's certain manual checks you still need to do. And like I tell everyone, this isn't an end-all be-all solution. It's just another tool for the toolbox. And the more you have, the more accurate you're going to be overall.
So is this a standalone device and solution, or can it also be integrated with, your MDT, so that you can use that in place of the typical scanner for your citation and ticketing software?
So it's a mobile application. So it runs off of iOS or Android. So, if you have, I don't know, some agencies might use tablets or something, but usually it's easy to put on a phone. And a lot of, officers have their own phones. I know a couple agencies I deal with, they all have issued a phone, so they put them on their phones. And there's other agencies that I also provide a device with the software on it, so that way they don't have to do anything, and it's separate, and they can, use that. And the way that came about was a retail liquor store was interested in it, and they wanted just the app, And it was, one of those mom and pop shops where there was like a husband and a wife. And I asked the husband, I said, "Are you going to be there every hour that it's open?" And he's like, "No, I work during the day and my wife works at night," or it was vice versa, maybe. And I said, "Well, what's going to happen when you leaving your phone with your employees? Or are you taking your personal phone with you?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm not leaving it there." I was like, "Well, okay, well then what's the purpose of having this? You're not covered because you have it with you at home, presumably. What good is it going to do your business? It's not going to protect your business as it would if, I gave you a device and it just stays there plugged in. It's always there. It's not a phone. You don't use it to get on Facebook. You're just using it just to scan IDs, and to protect your license." So that's how that came about. And that's been probably my most popular setup is the device.
Okay. So, do you have any like use cases or anything like that? Any stories of successes within your own agency that you've detected a fraudulent ID and maybe made a big arrest out of it or something? I mean, any anything that sticks out in your mind?
Well, I will say that. So one of the key features, there's two benefits of it for law enforcement agencies. The one is the speed. It's sub-seconds. I mean, it's quick. As long as the network you're on isn't bogged down, it's before you can even, you put the ID in the camera, and before you even can get it back to in front of you, it's already given you a result. So it's the speed. And like I mentioned before, if you're going, doing bar checks or you're working an event, I work a lot of big events. You have a bunch of people there. You're not going to sit there and try and run each one of those through your dispatcher, because that's not the only thing they're there for. You got, a lot more pressing, urgent matters going on. So it allows the officers to do their job more efficiently. The other one is, it promotes it promotes efficient enforcement. That's a tough word. Efficient enforcement. So what it does is, it'll keep track of, what the date and time of each scan, as well as what state was scanned. So the way that I've used that in the past with agencies is I've been able to help them analyze the most common times that fake IDs are used. And I've also, that comes in handy for like alcohol enforcement agencies, where you have a retailer who has the software, and they're scanning IDs, and they see an influx of IDs coming in between, say, 7 and 9 p.m. on Wednesday nights. So that way, if the agency wants to do enforcement, they're not sitting there Monday through Friday trying to guess when these kids are coming in. They're going to know the prime time is Wednesdays between 7 and 9. And they'll also know what states they're seeing the most of. So that way, if they're out and about, working, and someone hands them an ID from say Nebraska, they'll know, hey, wait, those are we've been seeing a lot of those Nebraskas. Let me give this one a little extra attention. So that's where that comes in handy. I will say a little anecdote that I have
helpful.
Was one of our law enforcement. What's that?
I said that's helpful.
One of our law enforcement, one of our law enforcement agency clients, they got their first big use of the technology at a large annual event that they do, like a concert sort of thing. And after the event, I talked to one of the agents, and they reported they made triple the number of arrests for fake ID use than they did the year prior, when they didn't use the app, when they were just doing it, the old-fashioned way, so to speak, manually, or calling each one in. So they got triple the number of arrests, and I think it was like 70 some in like a few hours. And it was crazy. And I've actually done some case studies where retailers would use, I'd give it to them to use and say, hey, use this. I just want to see how much of a problem this really is, because that way I can gauge, the problems, and I can also find out what states are popular, for my own benefit. So, the one I remember that was the most significant was it lasted 3 weeks. They used it for 3 weeks, and they scanned 73 IDs with it. and 51 of them were found to be fake. So I was just blown away. I'm like,
Wow.
that's like 70%. That's crazy. I mean, and that's just the ones that they scanned. That's assuming, they're scanning all the ones that look, underage or close to 21. But I was just, and that wasn't like scanning the same one over and over. That was individual. And it was just, I didn't even realize the problem was that bad. I mean, I knew it was bad, but that was crazy. So, obviously it allows them to get more training, and, what it gives them an awareness of what they should be looking for, because they don't obviously know the problem's that bad, and as long as they're serious about it, because, they're losing money by not making the sale. So I got to make sure that they understand that it's not about losing money. It's about protecting their community and, and their family members too.
So I want to shift gears just a little bit here, Mark, and talk about your copreneurial journey a bit, because you've already mentioned to us you're still on the job. You started this business while still in the midst of your law enforcement career, and I'm wondering if you could just share with everybody a bit how, what was that like for you? Obviously, did you set out with the intention that you wanted to start your own business, or did this kind of this was an opportunity that fell in your lap and you decided, hey, I'm going to pursue this?
Well, in terms of SureScan, this was more of I was looking to do, and I can go back and give you a brief history too, but as far as your question now, I was looking for something to, like a side hustle, because that's when this big side hustle thing was going, because I've always had the entrepreneurial spirit. So I was looking for something to do, and this sort of just like came upon me because I saw that it was working so well when I tested it. So I ended up recommending, anytime someone asked me about it, I'd say, forget about what I said before. Not all ID scanners are bad, as long as you get the right one that authenticates the ID and not just reads the ID. So, when I was promoting it, so to speak, or just saying, if this is what you're asking for, I would recommend this one. This is what I would get. The company asked me, they're like, well, we're getting so many people from you. Can you help us out? And that's when we had I became an exclusive provider with them to be able to, distribute the software. So that's how that began. It wasn't something I was setting out to do. I was actually trying at the time to think of other things to do. I had and if you know me well enough, you'll know I keep a list of all these things that I love doing. So, I was going through it, trying to figure out which one of these can I turn into a business, and I was like, do I want to do this, do that? No. And so I couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, well, this one seems the easiest. I don't really have to do that much. I do have a full-time job. So ended up being something that doesn't require as much of my time as some of the other ones would have, or, and this was my expertise. I mean, I've been in, the restaurant industry and law enforcement for more than 3 decades. Because, as my history goes, at 12 years old, I started my first business. I started a lawn care business. And if it wasn't for that dang thing called school, I would have still had it, but I had to go to school and I had to focus on my responsibilities at school. So, I did that for a couple of years. And then at 14, I had my first W-2 job. And that's when I started my career in the restaurant industry. And I went from being a dishwasher, at 14 to at 18, I was a kitchen manager at a restaurant. So I got some, managerial skills when I was still a teenager, which was good. So then, I graduated high school and I decided, I wanted to get a business degree. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to own my own business because that's what I was doing for all those years. The only problem was when I went to business school, I couldn't pass algebra. So that was sort of a roadblock there when you can't get through the math portion. So, that's when I said, what's my next best interest in law enforcement. Yeah, that doesn't require too much math. That's just like what, adding up fines for someone that gets a lot of tickets. Can't be that bad. So, I decided to go to college. I changed my major to criminology, criminal justice, and then I joined the Army. Imagine that. Went into the Army as military police because I wanted to get that experience. Because no one just hires you right out of high school. Sure, now they might, but they didn't back then. So I did the whole Army Reserve thing. Came back, went to school. I also worked during my whatever off time I had. I actually had 2 full-time jobs, and I went to school full-time. And I'm still trying to figure out how I did that, but I remember I did because I worked like at Denny's on the night shift, and then I worked during the day at another restaurant, and then the days that I wasn't in school. So it was really weird. I don't know when I actually slept, but I had other businesses
you've always
in between
had that
then.
hustle.
I went in. Yeah, and it's like you can sleep. I can sleep when I'm dead. That's what I used to say, but of course now it's like I just want to sleep, I want to rest. But I was doing everything from supplement sales. I did handyman stuff. I had a snow removal company. It's like whatever I thought I could make $1 in, I would try. I'd give it the old, was that college try? Is that what it was? But
Right.
Speaking of college, eventually I earned my BS degree, which my BS degree. It's actually ironic that it's called a BS degree because that's about what it was worth to me because I only remembered one thing that stuck with me. And that was business related. It was the 80-20 principle, but it was in regards to the recidivism rate.
Yeah.
So that was the only thing for some reason that I remembered from 7 years it took me to graduate a 4-year college. So that's because I had so many full-time jobs in between there. So, finally I decided to use my degree, and that's in quotes, use my degree. So then I went and I worked with the FBI. I became a uniformed officer there because I wanted to get my foot in the door because I wanted to be an agent. And I didn't have the right degree to be an agent at the time. So I figured I'd get my foot in the door. And then I realized when I was there that there's not much going on here. There wasn't any action, I was like 28 at the time,
Mm-hmm.
Still young, I guess, compared to now. And I was like, if I'm going to be law enforcement, I'm going to do something. I don't want to, walk around and do all that stuff. So I want to actually go out and catch criminals, not wait for a terrorist to come get me. I want to go out and get them. So it's more about being proactive as opposed to reactive. So that's basically where I started, and everything was always, I always had that in my mind that I was on to the next big thing. Like I'm just waiting for it to click in my head. And a lot of times it did click. It was just, my weakness, which is following through on these things, would kick in. Because, I remember when I was 13 years old, when I had my lawn care business, I said, I wish there was I want to start one store that you can buy anything at. You can go in and get groceries. You can go in and get auto parts. You can get a blade for your lawnmower. It was like pre-Amazon, and then Amazon happened. So it's like Walmart. I had this idea in the 80s. Yeah, or Walmart. But, it was one of those things. And, and that's happened a couple times where I've thought of things, I think of things, and then I'm like, that'd be a good idea. And then like years later, it's like, the next big invention, the Ring doorbell cam. I was like, sounds a lot like what I thought of 20 years ago when my car kept getting broken into. I thought of putting one in my vehicle. So every time the alarm triggered, it just started the video camera. But now they have something like that. I think it's called like the Night Owl or something. But, I guess I missed my calling as a product inventor.
What sort of challenges have you faced, starting this side hustle business while still, on duty and being part of, having a full-time job in law enforcement? What do you think, what's been unique about that, to being a law enforcement officer and starting a business?
Well, I mean, I guess the biggest thing is, there's a few issues. I'd say finding the time to dedicate to it, because I'm already, I got my hands in a lot of stuff at my job, and that's my main priority. So, I have to. This is basically when I have the time, the business. So that's and that's one reason I chose this, because it doesn't require a lot of my time. The other, and I called them like roadblocks, but those are more like, marketing to the right people, finding the right people to market to. Because when I do my trainings across the country, I'll mention it to the people in attendance, but those are usually, line officers. They're not the ones that are making these decisions. So it's getting to that next level, the people that are actually making the decisions to purchase these things. Yeah, the line officers love it. They'd love to have it, but they're not the ones with the checkbook, so to speak, or the credit card. So it's just finding the right people. And once I do find those right people, I don't regard myself as much of a salesperson. So, and again, that's why I chose this product, because it basically sells itself, because there's not really much explaining you have to do. You show them how it works. Bing, there you go. Or as they say, bada bing, bada boom. So, and feeling like everything I do has to be top notch and perfect. That's one of my, I guess, top 4 issues, is just, making sure everything gets done the right way. Cause that's how I've always been for some reason. It just has to be done exactly right, or not at all.
Yeah. So,
and I know you have a quote for that.
What's the future for you? You think? I had a quote for what? For
the perfectionism.
I did. I don't remember what that is now. I gave you a quote, and I don't even remember what my own quote was. Do you remember what it was? You could put words in my mouth if you want. As long as it was intelligent.
It was like perfectionism is the enemy of success, or something like that. Or
oh yeah,
and I think it was one of those that you can change the words up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I did say that. Sometimes I just spit things
always
out
stuck with me.
I don't even remember them.
I do that all the time. But yeah, I mean, I think my main obstacle, and what you said, where is this going? It's more of is not having a clear path, and I think that's my biggest thing. And not having that mission in regard to where I see my business going, and not having some sort of specific goal to strive for, because everything else I do pretty much in my life, there's a goal, there's an end goal. This one is just, because it started as, I'm just going to do this and see where it goes. It wasn't like, I wanted to do this all my life. So it wasn't like I had this big dream of, having being an exclusive provider of a technology.
So do you think that this business at some point becomes a full-time focus for you? Or, is this just continue to be a side hustle while you finish your law enforcement career? Or is there something else completely different on the horizon, you think?
Again, I haven't really thought that far out. That's what I'm hoping to do here soon. But, I do see it continuing. I think it has a lot of promise, especially because, it's not like, there's going to be some shortage of counterfeit IDs or fraud is ending, or identity theft. It's always going to be there. So, and I think incorporating it with the trainings that I give is what I sort of see myself enjoying, because I like giving providing my trainings to other law enforcement and helping them be able to detect these IDs, whether or not they use, this technology or they do it manually. I mean, there's something to be said for all of it. It's just a lot of agencies don't stress the importance. Well, they don't stress what I feel is important, which is knowing what you're looking at the first time someone gives you something that shows who they are, because that's what you're trying to determine right off the bat, is who someone is. And, I can probably 99% of calls, you're going to ask for an ID card of some sort. So again, if you don't know what you're looking for, and that's one thing that, my mentor has this great quote that says, counterfeit ID only has to be good enough to fool the person checking it. So it only has to be good enough to fool the person that, the law enforcement officer. It's got to be good enough for them to say, okay, I believe it. That's it. So that's the concern. And I feel like there can be a lot of work done with that. So that's, I think, where I'm going to go with that. And, it's a combination of education and tools. So I see those two can coexist, and they fit well together, because it not only tells you what you need to do, but it helps you do it. So that's where I think it can benefit law enforcement immensely.
Awesome. So you joined Leo to CEO in the private community here recently, and it's been awesome having you on board with that and being part of that community. We've certainly gotten to know each other a lot better over the last several weeks. But I wondered if you could share it all with everybody. What has that experience been like for you? And has that what sort of positive impact has that had on your business or your vision even for your business?
Well, I can tell you what I love the most about it, is the ability to interact with, so many like-minded colleagues and share advice and, throw stuff out there and see what other people are thinking. Because they all have, we all have similar experiences being in law enforcement. Because there's a lot of people that I am around, they don't really have that same mindset of, go-getters. It's a lot of them are, I can't wait till I retire so I can sit in my beach chair and throw my fishing line out. I mean, that's fine. If that's what you want to do, there's nothing wrong with it, but that's not my mindset. I'm always, like you said, I'm always looking for, some hustle or something I got to keep myself busy, cause I feel like if you sit there too long, you're going to end up staying there. So you always got to keep fluid and keep in motion. And, I always go back to that quote from the great Jim Rohn that says, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So that's why that's what I love about this community is everyone is, it's like-minded people. Those are the people I need to spend my time with. And that's why I'm on there all the time. It's like, come on, somebody else get on. And, it's almost like if it could be live, that'd be great. Or our open houses and our cohort meetings. That's what I, look forward to all the time, because it's, just like, being with those people and shooting ideas and, in real time, instead of, talking to someone that you work with and they're like, well, I don't really understand that. I can't wait to go home and, watch some movies or something. I'm like, I don't do that. That's not what I have in mind that's not my retirement is just changing jobs whenever that day comes. It's not it's finding something better, the next step. It's like a step progression.
Yeah. Well, you're really going to dig it then when we start doing mastermind groups. So that'll probably be your favorite thing to do is getting together with your mastermind group.
Yeah. I mean, I've always had that word in my mind and said, where do I find these things? And then, how am I going to find one that's fits me? I can go join a mastermind for SaaS owners or people that want to do business or interested in real estate investing or, but where am I going to find, I'm never going to find something that's like law enforcement officers that are going to retire and own their own business. Where am I going to find that at? It's like nowhere around where I am. That doesn't happen.
Well, you just did.
I just happened to be listening to a podcast. While I was snow blowing one time after a snowstorm.
Oh, nice.
Like, hey, this guy, he's right on what I was talking. Is he behind me? Is he in my head? It's almost like that little, like.
That's really interesting to hear that, because that is not something I've ever thought to ask listeners before, was what were you doing the first time you listened to the podcast? But that's actually really neat to hear, because I can like picture, because that's what I do too when I'm like outside doing things or whatever. I look for a new podcast to listen to, and so that's neat. That's neat to hear you were snowblowing the first time you listened to the Public Safety Innovators podcast. Love it.
Yeah, and as long as it's a menial task, it can't be anything where I have to think, because then I won't be paying attention. And it's just like something in my ear. I might as well have music, but I like to pay attention,
Right.
especially when I'm listening to ones like yours that have stuff that is really exciting to me, like drones and police stuff and starting businesses and all that. So anything with technology and innovation, I'm game for.
Awesome. Well, Mark, why don't you go ahead? Do you have any closing thoughts or anything you wanted to cover on the show here that we didn't so far?
No, I just wanted to thank everyone that'll listen to this. I never thought I still don't necessarily think I have all that much to offer, but I guess everyone has their own little tidbits to offer. And hopefully people can gain something from what I've gone through. I always enjoy mentoring people that I am able to mentor that are coming into law enforcement, but that's not really what we're doing here. We're doing more of the going out of law enforcement. So, I'm still not there yet. So that's why I'm hoping to pick stuff up. And if it's okay, I'd like to offer a gift for people that are listening, if that's okay, if that's the right forum for this.
Yeah, go right ahead.
So as a thank you for those listening, I wanted to offer I have a document that I created that is the top 5 counterfeited IDs across the country. So any law enforcement officer or agency that would like to get a copy of this PDF, I'd be more than happy to send it out to them. If they, I guess the email my contact information will be somewhere. And then also if they want to see for themselves how our technology can help them, I can offer a free trial to anyone that sends me a email from their agency address, because it is a secure app. I can't just give it out to anyone. So if they want to send me an email from their official agency address, I can send them both of those. Well, I can send them the PDF, and then we can schedule a time to do the app, because that requires a little bit of, a little bit more of my time to help get it going. But I'd be happy to do that for everybody.
Awesome. Well, we'll certainly put that stuff in the show notes for this episode, and along with your email address. Why don't you let everybody else know exactly where they can connect with you? Do you have a website? Are you on social media? What's the best way to find you and interact?
So my website for the business is SureScan.us, and that's SureScan, and it's .us. And then I'm also on LinkedIn. It should be just under my name, Mark Baxter. It'll say a bunch of stuff with counterfeit ID and things like that. Be a bald guy, no hair. Can't miss me. I'm not the vocal coach, because there is someone with my name that's a vocal coach or a singing coach. But no, that's the best way to get a hold of me. If you send an email, the contact form on SureScan.us, you can get a hold of me, or you can also email me directly. It's Mark, MARK, .surescan@gmail.com. So you can reach me there as well. And I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has Mark. of IDs.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Mark, for being on the show. And I'll also add in there too that anybody that wants to, you can also connect with Mark inside the Leota CEO community. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, you can just go to to CEO.com. And it doesn't matter whether you type in the word 2 or the number 2, it'll take you to the same place. So it's just LEO to CEO.com. You can find out more information there about joining the private community and getting to connect with other like-minded copreneurs in that community that are starting and growing businesses of their own. So, Mark, it's been awesome having you on the show. Good getting to know you, and looking forward to seeing your business grow and getting to know you better as well. So thanks again for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for the community. Doing great things. Look forward to more great things to come.
Me too. Hey, thanks for sticking around till the end of the show. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review at psi.chat/review. I would love to hear your feedback, and it will also help other public safety innovators like yourself find the show. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode. Just go to psi.chat, click on episodes, and search this episode number, and you'll find all the links, descriptions, and resources we talked about. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, and you'll be notified when the next episode is live. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.